If the pink candle is lit on the Advent wreath, it must be Gaudete Sunday. Gaudete means rejoice. Rejoice. But did you ever wonder why we have a day to remind us of joy in the middle of Advent? Advent is this time of stillness, waiting, preparation, simplicity. Some people even call it a mini Lent. And of course, we're preparing for the great feast of Christmas with the music and the lights and the gifts. Christmas definitely seems like a time for joy. But why in this time of stillness and preparation of Advent? Why do we have a day of joy? We might think of joy as having to do with big events, big feasts, lots of activity. But I've been reading a lot lately about the connection between joy and stillness, between joy and rest. The theologian Tricia Hersey proclaims that rest is resistance. Resistance to the grind culture that tells us we're only worthy if we're either working or spending or both. Rest reminds us that we're worthy just as we are. So important for us to hear, especially this time of year. The Catholic philosopher Joseph Pieper said that we need times when we're not either working or resting up for work. We need times of leisure in order to truly celebrate what is real. He said that in leisure we acquiesce to our own being. We say yes to who we are as God's creation. We remember that we receive ourselves as gifts from God instead of creating ourselves by our own efforts. Could joy be waiting for us when we rest? John Paul II points to God's rest on the seventh day of creation. Of course, God is not tired or inactive or asleep. Instead, he says, the divine rest of the seventh day speaks of God's lingering before the very good work of creation in order to cast upon it a gaze of joyous delight. This is a contemplative gaze which does not look to new accomplishments, but enjoys the beauty of what has already been achieved. Picture a parent watching their beloved child play, a gaze of joyous delight like the gaze that God casts on us, a contemplative gaze that enjoys the beauty of who the beloved already is. And didn't we hear that in today's first reading? The prophet tells God's people to shout for joy because God rejoices in you. Here's the difference between God's joy and the joy we are called to on this Gaudete Sunday. God is infinite. We, beloveds, are finite. God is omnipotent. We, beloveds, are fallible and limited. God can rest in joy and delight in beloved creation without stopping any bit of the divine activity that undergirds and calls forth and loves into being all of creation continually. But we humans, in order to rest in joy, we need to actually rest. In order to give thanks, to celebrate, to behold and give our yes to all the goodness that God is pouring out on us even now, we have to slow down. We have to pay attention. We have to step back for a time from working, fixing, tending, evaluating, because we can't celebrate creation while we're trying to change it. We can't celebrate creation while we're trying to change it. I know, it's hard to stop. There's so much to do in our world, so many wrongs to make right, so many wounds to bind up. But listen, our readings tell us to rejoice 10 separate times, I counted. God created us for work and for rest, for giving and for celebrating the gifts we have received. They are not the same, and we're created to do both. To be ready for joy, we have to do less. In the gospel reading, John the Baptist shows us how. Share what you have, don't take more than you need, resist the temptation to abuse your power. Do less, have less, make do with less. God can do all the things at once. We cannot. And we're called to joy. We're commanded to joy. We're commanded to leave room to cast a gaze of joyous delight on what is real, the gifts of creation around us, the gift of the incarnation that is promised. But for that, we need time. We need space. We need silence. We need to be ready. What great wisdom in the church's tradition to put a day for joy in this season of stillness, to remind us that joy comes when we slow down, when we accept silence and waiting and inactivity, when we remember that everything good is a gift from God. Yes, indeed, Advent is a time for joy. If it were easy to make do with less, we wouldn't need God. All John the Baptist had to say was, share your food and don't abuse your power. And the people were like, he is definitely from God because this is not the way the world thinks. Tricia Hersey reminds us of the gospel song, this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me, the world didn't give it, and the world can't take it away. No, indeed. Joy does not come from more clothes, from power over others, from the ability to make what we want to happen. Joy comes from resting in the presence of what is real, our God, our loved ones, the beauty of God's creation. God, help us to make do with less power, less wealth, less busyness and activity. On this Gaudete Sunday in Advent, lead us to the stillness where we find your joy.